Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Disney Publishing Spring and Summer 2026 Preview. I am Ronnie Curry, an editor over here at Booklist. And before we begin, I will go over just some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list can be downloaded by typing the URLs on this screen into your web browser. And if you have any trouble accessing those materials, you can just contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. If you're in the audience, you are in listen only mode, but we definitely welcome any questions that you may have. On the bottom of your Zoom screen is a toolbar with a button for Q&A. If you have a question or if you need technical assistance, you can just click Q&A and type your message into the box that pops up. We will do our best to respond to all of the tech-related questions, and we can pass along all of the other questions to today's panelists, and they'll have a chance to follow up with you after the webinar. We also offer closed captioning on all of our webinars. So to enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the captions icon on the toolbar that I mentioned a moment ago. From there, you can select Show or Hide Captions from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable the subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist does expect all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect. And so anyone who violates that standard of behavior may, at the discretion of the organizers, be removed. And today we have a great lineup. We will have the pleasure of hearing from Shanna Upchurch, the author of The Honeybee Highway. We have Kersten Hamilton, author of LILIBET Makes a Friend. We have Tori Tadiar, author of the ILUSTRA series. Tori couldn't be here live, but she has made a great video presentation for everyone. We have Primo Gallanosa, author of Pet Placement Society. Jill Tu, author of RAYANA Johnson'S Giant Leap. Jan M. Flynn, author of GRIFFIN Speaker. Codie Crowley, author of Body Count. And last but not least, we will have Darianne Schramm, author of 72 Hours of You. And to kick us off, we will hear from Shanna Upchurch. Shanna lives outside Dallas with a bunch of chickens and children, and of course, honeybees. She's known around town as the person who will throw on a bee suit, Ghostbusters style, at any time of day to relocate a swarm or inspect a hive. Her own honeybees are quite spoiled and produce rich clover honey because Shanna won't let anyone mow the back pasture. Her deep love for pollinators and the vital role they play in our world shines through in The Honeybee Highway, her picture book debut. Thank you so much for joining us, Shanna.
Thank you so much. I look forward to chatting with everyone today. I grew up in the Midwest, primarily in Illinois. You can go ahead and click on the slide, and then a couple more graphics will come up. I know we like to say that all children are beautiful, but I'm just here to say that photos don't lie, and that's me in the middle. But I grew up in the Midwest because my dad was a plant scientist. He predominantly worked on soybeans, so we had to be near the big farms. We can go on to the next slide. And so most of my childhood was spent on tractors in big fields with a lot of exposure to big agriculture. I generously donated a lot of my childhood hours to my dad's plots. All right, and so we can click on the next slide. If we fast forward a few decades, then go ahead and click a second time if you don't mind. I am now managing a small homestead in North Texas with all the honeybees and well, I didn't have honeybees yet. What happened was this swarm of honeybees showed up in my yard, and they fascinated me. And so I did about 3 minutes of YouTube research and decided to scoop these bees out of the tree. And from that point forward, I was hooked. I have become much more adept in my research and knowledge of honeybees since that time. So I was a kid who grew up around big agriculture and was now a backyard beekeeper. We can go on to the next slide, please. Um, Fast forward a few more months, just a few months from that time, and I met a man in the my local public library. This is not a picture of him because that would be very weird. But the man was a master gardener and had a booth out at my library. And so I struck up a conversation with him and we got to talking about bees. And he said, you know, I've got a buddy who's a commercial beekeeper and his bees are on the almonds right now. And I said, what do you mean his bees are on the almonds? I don't know what that means. And he said, you don't know? And I said, no. And he said, every year as a society, we ship billions of honeybees, that's billions with a B, of honeybees across the country to pollinate the food that we consume worldwide. This was brand new information for me. And I thought, if I, as the daughter of a plant scientist and a backyard beekeeper, don't know that this is what we rely on to keep our food systems going, I wonder if the public at large knows about this. I was already knee deep pursuing a writing career, and so we can skip to the next slide. What was born then was an idea about a little girl named Joey who transports her honeybees across the country to pollinate the blossoms that then turn into food that feed our world. And I'm so excited to share this story with you today. We can jump right into the book now. In the holding yard at the edge of my uncle's farm, the honeybees cluster deep inside their hives. I shroud them in smoke, puff, puff, to keep them calm for when we start to move them. Uncle Mike bars me this time every year, says he couldn't do it without me, his honeybee expert. He's right, of course. Jose, the best driver in the business, dozes under his cap inside the sleeper cab, resting up for the road ahead. The crew arrives and we work the hives, straightening and strapping, counting and cleaning. When I give the thumbs up, they stack the hives like blocks. 200, 300, 408 of them, all stamped double J's honeybees. The J's are for Joey Jordan, me, named after my favorite niece, Uncle Mike likes to tell people. I'm your only niece, I remind him. When the stacking's done, I unroll the netting and drop it over the sides. The crew snugs it down tight. The bees are humming now. Shh, settle in, I whisper. It's a long way to California. California's where the almond orchards are, big as whole cities and full of flowers that can't pollinate themselves. That's why they need our bees, to dip and sip and gather pollen on their hairy legs, then bounce from flower to flower and turn them into food. But first, we've got to get to California, and quick. Jose rolls out. Uncle Mike and I follow, the loader in tow. We curve up and out of Florida and across the bottom of Alabama. The highway sits right on the water, which laps and taps at the edges, keeping time with the song on the radio. Next is Mississippi, just like Alabama, only greener. We try not to stop because when the sun's shining and the truck is still, the bees start to fly, and they might not get back in their boxes when Jose takes off again. We can't go losing a bunch of bees. When we have to stop for the bathroom or fuel, we run like our pants are on fire, into the station and out again. People stare and stare. After a whole city's drive outside a city called Jackson, Mississippi, the darkness catches up to us. Even though the bees are clustered again and won't be a bother, Jose parks in the far back. 408 beehives tend to make people skittery. I check the straps and tighten the netting. Inside the truck stop, we each grab a shower and a bite to eat. I call home on Uncle Mike's phone. Then we play cards until my eyelids droop. Good night, Jose, I say as he climbs into the sleeper. Que duermas bien, Double J, he says back. Uncle Mike tucks me in cocoon style. We fall asleep while the stars keep watch. At the crack of dawn, we're off again. We cross the top of the Louisiana Butte. The sun climbs the sky, and I wave to trees that crowd the highway like friendly giants. So far, so good, I say. Uncle Mike knocks on wood. In the middle of Texas, our luck runs out. A rare January heat comes on fierce. Traffic jams up bumper to bumper, which means there's no breeze to keep the bees cool. It gives me a nervous belly and has Uncle Mike chewing the skin off his thumb. Thankfully, Jose knows what to do. He barrels down side roads and old state highways, clouding us in dust. When we stop, I race for the hose and spray the hives to cool them off. Hang in there, I tell the bees. We're halfway now. New Mexico welcomes us with cooler weather. It relieves our minds and sets me to talking. Uncle Mike, I say. Mm-hmm. Did you know that there are more than 8 billion people on Earth? I heard something like that, he says. And if the honeybees didn't pollinate the plants, we wouldn't have enough food, would we? Nope, he says, no chance, which is what I thought. After 3 long days, and just when I think we're never going to make it, Jose's truck hisses to a stop at the inspection site. Almost there, I tell the bees. A few minutes tick by, then the inspector says we passed. With a sliver of daylight, we arrive at the orchard where the almond trees stand like soldiers, row after row after row. The air is cool but carries hints of sweet springtime. I run the controls as we tuck our bees around the orchard. With an empty truck, Jose has to leave. I wrap my arms around him and say, "See you in a few weeks." "See you then, Reina de las Abejitas," he says. The next morning, at the first touch of sunlight, a bee peeks out of its box, then another and another. Yes, I say, fly, fly, fly. For the 6 weeks that while the bees bring the almonds to life, a new crew will tend to them. Then Jose will drive them home to Florida. After that, they'll go to Maine and New Jersey for blueberries, then Massachusetts for cranberries. And back on the West Coast, other people's bees will pollinate cherries and raspberries, pears and apples. It's a whole lot of work when it comes down to it. I believe we're out of time, so we can go ahead and skip this page if you'd like. We can go straight on to the end. I lean out the window. The wind tries to steal my breath, but even so, I give a shout for all the honeybees that crisscross the countryside, turning blossoms into food. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shanna. That was cool. And we will next hear from Kersten Hamilton. Kersten is the critically acclaimed author of books for toddlers, teens, and all people in between. Red Truck, which was called Well Crafted and Appealing in a starred review from Booklist, has sold almost 250,000 copies. Her picture book about the evolution of dogs from wild wolves to humans' best friend, called First Friend, was called Lyrical and Delightful by Kirkus and received a star from SLJ. And her YA novel, In the Forests of the Night, the second in the Goblin Wars trilogy, led Kirkus to call her a wizard at creating tension. And she is eagerly awaiting her invitation to wizarding school. Kirsten has worked as a ranch hand, a woodcutter, a lumberjack, a census taker, a wrangler for wilderness guides, and an archaeological surveyor. She currently lives in New Mexico, where, when not writing, she hunts dinosaurs in the Ojito Wilderness. Thank you so much for being here today, Kirsten.
Thank you, Ronnie. My book is a little different. It's different from me because I've never really written about myself this closely before. We have a lot of words for autism today, like we'll say on the spectrum or neurodivergent. I like neurospicy myself. But when I was a kid, the words were different, especially from the kids. They call me robot face, they call me Spock, computer head, words that were a lot less kind. Words that I don't even like to say today. But words are changing. People understand a lot more about autism. Even so, making friends is still hard, not just for kids who are neurospicy like I was, but for all kids. And I wrote Lilibet for any kid who needs to know how to make a friend. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to disappear because I have to look at my book to read. Lilibet was a maker. She had tools. She had a lab and a notebook. She had tons of friends, but they were all imaginary. Calico Kate rode on the pegs of Lilibet's bike when she zoomed down the hill. Kate usually tumbled off when they went over the bump, but she landed on her feet. She was a pirate after all. Tom Zombie liked to race. He was amazingly fast for a zombie. Dire Pup was just the right size to pad along beside her as she walked to school. Lilibet imagined him big enough to wink at her through the window when she couldn't talk, or when she couldn't stop talking. One day, the invention she'd been working on flipped, flapped, and flew across the room. "You can make anything, Lilibet," Calico Kate said. Dire Pup licked her. Tom Zombie groaned, "Brains." It was true. She did have brains, but could she really make anything? Lilibet started to draw and write. Real Friend 1.0. real, real Friend 1.0 listens to me, knows the difference between a bug and an insect, runs faster than Tom Zombie, can jump the bump, never calls me robot face or computer brain, and does not ask, "Are you a boy or a girl?" When she finished, she took her wagon out to gather a few supplies. She was pulling a very nice set of wheels out of a trash heap when a voice said, "What's this?" It was Paul Peanut Shelley, and he was looking at her notebook. "My plan," Lilibet said, "for making a friend." "Cool, cool," Peanut said. "Can I help?" "I don't think so," Lilibet said. "There might be beetles." The last time a ladybug got into the classroom, Peanut had hidden under his desk. Lilibet walked away quickly, but Peanut followed. "I have a head," he said. "Everyone has a head." Lilibet put a pair of boots into the wagon. "I mean an extra head." He pointed at her plan. "Like this." "Show me," she said. Peanut talked all the way to his mother's salon. Mostly about his baby sister. Lilibet didn't know anything about babies, but the head was exactly what she wanted. "All right," Lilibet said, "you can help." Peanut talked all the way to the lab. He talked while they attached cranks, drive rods, gears, and wheels. "So," he said at lunchtime, "do you know any stories? I like stories." "I know one about Calico Kate," Lilibet said. "She's a pirate." "Cool, cool," Peanut said. "I want to hear it." So she told him. By the time she told him the stories of Tom Zombie and Dire Pup, they had attached the head. "Now we race." "I'm not a good runner," said Peanut. "Not at all. Nope." "I'm not going to race you," Lilibet said. "I'm going to race my friend. It will be fast." "It doesn't look fast," Peanut said. "It will be," Lilibet said, "when it comes down the hill." Lilibet pulled. Peanut pushed. They finally got to the friend to the top. "When I say ready, set," Lilibet began. The friend didn't wait for ready or set. It went straight to go. Lilibet ran. The friend galloped behind her, creaking and clacking and flailing its arms. It was fast, too fast. Lilibet dove over the bump and rolled. The friend flew over her and smash landed. When Peanut finally made it down the hill, he collapsed on the grass beside her. "You won," he gasped. Lilibet started to laugh. Peanut held his sides and rolled with laughter. "You're cool," he said. "Cool, cool, cool." She took out her notebook and turned a page. "What are you doing now?" Peanut asked. Lilibet couldn't talk when she was thinking. She could write and she could draw. When she was done, she wrote "perfect" across the page. Real Friend 2.0, talks a lot, likes stories, knows all about babies. He's never called me a robot face or computer brain or asked, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Thinks I am cool, cool, cool. "Hey," Peanut said, "that looks like me." It did, but not exactly like him. She hadn't drawn the ladybug that had landed in his hair. Calico Kate, Tom Zombie, and Dire Pup all agreed it was better that he didn't know. The beginning of a great friendship. Now, now I'm laughing because I can imagine myself reading this in front of a class and saying that he talked all the way to his mother's saloon. So I better be careful when I'm doing that. But before I go, I would like to give a shout out to the illustrator of this book. She did an absolutely brilliant job, Chandra McCloskey. You can see she's really, 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 really good. And I can tell from her illustrations that she must have had imaginary friends too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. Next, we are going to hear from Tori Tadiar. As I said, Tori couldn't be here, but sent in a great video for us. But Tori is a Filipino comic artist based in rainy Metro Manila. She is an IT professional by day and works on comics and stories every chance she can get. Her goal is to tell stories that introduce and immerse readers in alternate worlds based on the culture of the land she calls home. When she's not busy creating comics, Tori can be found relaxing at home with her husband Miko, figuring out how to be a mom, or occasionally exploring unfamiliar new places. You can connect with her online at Hi Tori Art, that's HAI Tori Art on Instagram, and Hi Tori on Facebook and X. And we will pass it off to Tori's presentation now.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tori Tadiar, and I'm here to read you an excerpt from Daybreaker, the first book of the ILUSTRA graphic novel series. So my name is Tori Tadiar. I'm a comic artist, and I'm also a wife, a mom to a 7-year-old baby boy, and the owner of 2 very different dogs. And I was born, raised, and I'm currently based in the Philippines. Here are some photos that I took from recent trips all around the Philippines. So these are beaches, mountains, islands, forests. That for me was very magical when I was going through them, when I was looking at them, and was ultimately the inspiration for me to write this book, which is all about Philippine mythology, Philippine folklore, and really the magic of the environment that I grew up in. So here's the quick summary of what the book is all about. We have Mahika, or Mika for short, who puts a curse on 2 of her classmates and needs to learn how to use these powers to undo the spell. But in the process, they unknowingly awaken mythical beasts, ancient deities, and they must lay them to rest before the world or summer school, which one comes first, ends. So I'll read you an excerpt from Kabanata 1. Kabanata means chapter in Tagalog. And we start with Mika, who is on her last day of school. And we see here her class advisor telling all the other students, get this note card, make sure you have signatures from your friends. It's a sort of send-off note before they all go into summer vacation. And Mika tries to approach a couple of classmates, but nobody wants to sign her note card because Mika's a bit unlucky. So nobody wants to be her friend all throughout the school year. And what I just wanted to highlight here before we turn the page is that this school of ILUSTRA, was actually inspired by Philippine High School for the Arts. So it's a boarding school in the mountains of Mount Makiling in Laguna, which is a province in the Philippines. So Mika is caught by her teacher, and the teacher is asking who's going to pick her up from this boarding school. And she says, no, I'll be staying. I'll be staying, and my grandmother actually gave me permission to stay at the dorms for the summer. So the teacher lets her go, but reminds her that she needs to be at the assembly hall in a few minutes. And then she finds an empty classroom, hides there, and then brings out a photo of her grandmother. So while she's talking to the photo of her grandmother, she starts drawing on the board, telling her about her plans for the holidays. And one more thing before we turn the page is that these outfits were actually inspired by real life designs of a barong. So a barong is the Philippine national costume, and it's from a Cebu-based boutique called Balik Batik. So Mika continues drawing, talks to her grandmother, wonders what wonderful things are in store for her as she's finally alone. She can finally express herself, not be afraid of the other kids judging her. But then she starts to break down. So her grandmother is no longer here. She just looks at the photo and she really misses her grandma. She wishes that she could just go back to just her and her grandma and all those stories that her grandma used to tell her. Because apparently these stories of legends, of myths, of fables, these are the things that Mika truly believes in, but the other kids think it's hokey. So the other kids bully her or don't include her because she seems a bit too weird. And fun fact, that's actually based on a photo of myself and my own Lola, my grandmother. So I grew up with her hearing these stories, hearing these beliefs, and I myself believe a lot of them still to this day. So we fast forward to the assembly. These are all the students of the ILUSTRA freshman year, and they're announcing that the science class won the best project of the year by creating this beautiful butterfly enclosure. Um, and these students, I just wanted to highlight more what the school is all about. They're split into 4 different strands. Like you have art students, you have science students, you have physical education students, and then those who are more focused on academics. And they wear different uniforms that are really based on Philippine national costumes, as well as what the students realistically wear today. And the different houses, as you would call them, are based off of Philippine national heroes, depending on what they stood for and why they were heroes in the first place. So the choir begins, so this is the final presentation for the year. And the main soloist, his name is Teo, his voice breaks, people laugh, and then it's interrupted by Hale. So Hale, Hallelujah Santos, is an athlete. So she's the co-captain of the school's SIPA team. So it's a sport where she kicks around the ball. And then she basically walks up, has a few complaints to take up with the student council president, and then she tries to squish a moth that went out of the enclosure. But just to share with you, the belief is moths are actually the spirits of your deceased loved ones who are coming to visit you. So Mika, because she believes all of this, does not want that moth squashed. So she runs, tries to stop Hale, and in the process destroys the enclosure. So she gets herself, Teo, and Hale into detention. And in detention, she hears the voice of her grandma coming from the moth that she saved. So follows the moth, talks to it because she knows it's her grandma. She can hear the voice of her grandma. She falls down, and then, true enough, it's her grandmother visiting her. So they finally get to talk, and Mika is finally able to express that she has missed her grandmother so much. We have this reunion. Basically, she hears a sound from the balete tree, which is basically where she ended up in. And from the balete tree, she can hear that it wants to be called, and she speaks in this magical language. And this magical language is actually called baybayin. So these are simple Tagalog sentences that uses this syllabary. So if you're familiar with Tagalog, or you can read baybayin, you'll be able to actually read along to what these magical symbols mean. But Mika awakens an encanto of the tree, and the encanto grants her one wish. Mika's wish is to bring her grandmother back, but that's not possible. And then we see that Teo and Hale was actually following Mika along, and they get revealed. Mika tries to stop them because they found out that she was actually hiding in the dorms. She didn't have a family to come back to. She might get sent to social services. So she asks the Encanto to just, make sure they don't get away, but she repeats the spell after him, and they actually get pulled in, and now the kids are all bound together. So how do they get out of this mess? Because detention is only for 1 week. They can't be stuck together forever. And now they're only finding out that Mika has magic of her own. So that ends the first chapter. They are bound by this magic sun ring that's based off of Kalinga tattoo design that shows that it is the sun, and hints at what will come later on. There's more magic, more creatures, more deities to discover in the rest of the 7 chapters of the book. More places and more adventure, bigger things in different settings. So far, we've had an overwhelmingly positive response from the readers that we've had who went through, were able to relate, were able to see themselves in Mika and her friends and the adventure that they went on. Particular, I received this fan mail from a 9-year-old reader who finished the book in one sitting and is looking forward to the next one. And Actually, there is a next one coming up. Second book of the series, Tidal Rise, which is coming in October 2026. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks to Tori, wherever you are, for that presentation. And our next presenter will be Primo Gallanosa. Primo is a full-time husband, dad, and author illustrator. He grew up watching a lot of cartoons, which eventually led him to attending California Institute of the Arts to study animation. He ended up becoming a terrible animator, but he loved the art of story, and some even said he was kind of okay at it. Now he makes picture books and middle grade graphic novels. He lives in Los Angeles with his wife and son. Take it away, Primo.
Awesome. Thank you, Ronnie. So yeah, this is my first middle grade. It's a pet placement society. So yeah, growing up, I loved stories about friends working together, like solving problems and going on big adventures at the same time. So some of the stories I liked were like Goonies and Sandlot and Stand By Me. So I always wanted to work on a story that was somewhere in that realm. And Pet Placement Society was that opportunity. At the same time, I also really love animals, and anything that deals with animals, like drawing them or being around them, is something I really love. So behind me, you can see that I have some of my animals. I have a tarantula and I have some fish, and right now I'm really into plants, so that's like my new pet. But I've had dogs in the past, but yeah, they all passed away and I can't make myself get another dog because it's just too hard. But anyways, Pet Placement Society is about a group of tweens that work together to help animals from a local shelter find forever homes, while at the same time dealing with some middle school drama. The story follows a 12-year-old girl named Mia, who is having a rough start to middle school life. Her parents run and own a pet shelter called Forever Home, but it's getting overcrowded and stressing them out. Her school life isn't going so great either. Her best friend Lily is making new friends and no longer interested in the same things anymore. In response, Mia makes friends with a new kid named Riley and tries to solve the problem of her family's overcrowded shelter by having Riley adopt a dog named Ruffles. But that snowballs and causes more issues. Mia is determined. She wants to help Riley and Ruffles patch things up with Lily, find other homes for sheltered pets, and decide what's most important to her as she navigates through middle school life. Um, so now I'm just going to read two spreads from the book. This one is about Mia befriending the new kid Riley, and Riley somehow finds the pet shelter that her family owns. So now she's trying to get Riley to adopt a dog, Ruffles, and hopefully they can become good friends. So here I go. See if I can find it. Got it. Sorry. Say something, Mia. Hey, want to meet some cool animals? Sure. I hope he doesn't think it stinks in here. We're a little busier than normal. We call it the holiday rush. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, it's cool. I liked your ideas for our group presentation. Thanks. I'm not a big sports person, but my dad is. Yep, he watches all the sports. 5 minutes later, awkward silence. Cue crickets now. Hey, do you like dogs? Yes. Meet Ruffles. Is that even a dog? Sure, his tongue is weirdly long and he's missing some hair, but he's all dog. More like all hair. You know, I think Ruffles can help you out. With what exactly? So next page. Look, he loves you already. He is kind of cute in like a weird way. You guys match. Not that you look weird or anything. So how's Ruffles going to help me again? He'll help you get out of your shell and stuff. But I like my shell. Look, I know what you're going through. I was a new kid a few years ago. When I moved here, I had a hard time making friends. I was a borderline loser, but then my parents brought home my dog Snow. I met other kids because of him. I think Ruffles can do the same for you. And that's it. Yeah, and so the rest of the book, it's Mia making new friends in her class, and they do this class presentation. And during that whole class presentation, they uh, they work together to help Mia find homes for sheltered pets. And in the end, they create the club Pet Placement Society. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Primo. And our next presenter will be Jill too. Jill is the critically acclaimed award-winning author of dystopian romance and middle grade novels that imagine Black girls in exciting new worlds. Her books have received starred reviews from Kirkus, PW, and School Library Journal, been named Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selections, and have been featured in the New York Times, in People, and elsewhere. Jill lives in Atlanta with her family. Thank you so much for being here, Jill.
Yeah, thanks for having me. All right. So, in case you couldn't tell from this stunning fourth grade photo, I was a huge nerd growing up. I think it might have been genetic. My dad is a huge nerd. He has a replica of Sting in his office. That is Frodo's sword from Lord of the Rings, in case anyone's not familiar. Um, and I was into all sorts of nerdy things growing up that none of my friends were into. And as a black girl in the 90s, the box that society wanted to put me in was extremely narrow, and my nerdy interests didn't really fit. Luckily for me, my parents did not care. They encouraged me to try horseback riding, go to Renaissance festivals, and yes, drum roll please, next slide. Space camp. I loved space camp. It was the absolute coolest. So yeah, basically I write middle grade books for anybody who needs encouragement taking up room with their passions, especially if they're the only person in the room who looks like they do. So Rayanna Johnson, Rayanna Johnson's Giant Leap. This character actually started off as the bestie of my main character's bestie in my debut middle grade, Kaya Morgan's Crowning Achievement. And as soon as ARCs went out for Kaya, I got DMs from readers demanding that Ray get her own book. And Ray is really funny. She's bold. She's a super loyal friend. And when it came time to tell her story from her point of view, I wanted to give readers a more nuanced view of who Ray is, right? So, behind that confident exterior is a girl who's constantly overanalyzing and thinking through each situation. She believes that if she plans for every possible scenario, then disaster won't catch her off guard. But then a few different disasters all strike at once. She gets her first period, hundreds of miles away from home. Her parents begin fighting like a lot, and her best friend in the entire universe is acting really strange and distant. And there's no planning for any of this, and Ray's stuck at camp without her usual coping mechanisms. So as the book unfolds, we see her learn that maybe the key to a successful mission isn't planning for every possibility, but is relying on your crew to face whatever comes. And I would say, beyond the heartfelt life lessons, there's a ton of STEM and nerdy fun in this book. There are rocket building competitions, a whole chapter dedicated to laser tag, and references to important space missions. And there's also a model space station building contest, which is what my excerpt comes from. To set the scene a little bit, Ray's having like the worst time with one teammate in particular named Travis. He's always in her way. And he disagreed with her about how to build this space station, which like Ray does that like for fun in her own spare time, build space stations. So I was like, she's got this. But she was able to incorporate different teammates' views on what the space station should include. One of her teammates, Aiden, believes it should have a fart chamber so that the astronauts don't crop dust each other up there in space, obviously. But when it comes time to give the presentation, things begin to fall apart quite literally. So now I will read. By the time we reach the middle of the auditorium stage, half the soda cans have clattered to the ground. Lily and Hayden are on all fours trying to pick up the modules and bits of cardboard tube that have practically unraveled under the weight. Our space station looks less like a technological marvel and more like some kind of alien spaghetti creature. This isn't a totally accurate depiction, I plead with the judges. We've got some designs you can look at. Here. I swallow down the ache in my throat and hand over the drawings I made in the team room. The judges squint at my sketch, comparing it to the atrocity on stage that seems to be disintegrating before my eyes. The timer beside them informs us that we've already used up 30 seconds of our allotted 3 minutes. We have several modules dedicated to scientific research in space, including a botany. I looked to Fiona, eyebrows raised in a silent plea for her to take over the part of her speech There's part of the speech that covers her module, but her module is literally not there. I look behind her off stage to where an empty Canada Dry can rests sadly on the ground. Meanwhile, the judges' secondhand embarrassment must be off the charts because they're looking every which way but up at the stage. I've got to pull them back somehow. My pulse pounds in my ears. Think of something. I had a really cool idea, something no other station has. Aiden steps forward, waggling his eyebrows at me as if to say, I've got this. But he most certainly does not. I haven't even gotten a chance to tell the judges about the artificial gravity generating centrifuge. No way are we going to waste precious minutes on Aiden's fart chamber. I refuse to let that be my Galaxy Camp legacy. Aiden, no. I don't want to cause a scene in front of the judges, so I pretend I'm the freeze dance champion of the world, staying perfectly still except for the pleading words coming out of the corner of my mouth. I shake my head so that only he can see. But Aiden just grins and claps me on the back so hard that I almost lose my grip on the center of the space station. Oh, come on, Ray, he says. My idea is such a gas. My cheeks are twitching from the smile I'm holding for the audience, but inside, my world is imploding. A desperate flame roars in my stomach, crackling through my limbs. Why is Aiden so insistent on ruining this? I thought we were a team. I thought we had a plan. The seconds are ticking down. It's been half a minute left. Picture this, Aiden begins. It's been a long day up in space, and you've had nothing but freeze-dried bean burritos over the last 4 meals. He must be stopped. I turn to Michelle, who's helping Lily retape her module back onto the ship's useless spaghetti noodle arms. We've been up here for a full minute now, without giving the judges any new information, and now Aiden's about to ensure that the last impression we leave the judges with is freeze-dried flatulence. Every second we waste not giving a real presentation is an opportunity missed. Points are leaving on the table for an assignment that predicts our performance at the final mission simulation, which predicts our potential as NASA employees, which predicts the rest of our lives. Would you shut up about the stupid farts already? I don't even realize I'm the one screaming until the words are out of my mouth. Every voice in the auditorium is silent. Every face turned to me. Something small clatters on the stage, and I realize Travis's Altoid has fallen out of his mouth. In the audience, the timer beside the judges' chairs flashes 0000. We are done. So done. And that's Rayana.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Next, our presenter will be Jan M. Flynn. Jan has worked as a stage and television actor, a middle school English and drama teacher, a specialty hardwood store owner, and a state director of a national nonprofit health organization. At one point, she performed in a theme park where she rode a camel, a water buffalo, a Brahma bull, and a temperamental llama. So it makes complete sense that she's now a writer. Her award-winning short fiction has appeared in anthologies, literary magazines, and journals. She lives in Boise, Idaho, with her husband and their needy cat. Thank you so much for being here today, Jan.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to share Griffin Speaker with you. It is my debut novel and the first in a new middle grade fantasy series. It is always, as most writers feel, it's a little hard to toot my own horn, but luckily I've gotten comments from some of my middle grade author heroes who have been so generous. Here are 3 of them. One from Shannon Messenger, author of the Keeper of the Lost City series, Gracie Kim, who wrote The Last Fallen Star, and Bruce Colville, author of Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher and Unicorn Chronicles and others. And I'm so honored by these blurbs and by the others that Griffin Speaker has earned from other writers whom I deeply admire. Next slide, please. Don't worry, I'm not going to read this slide to you, but as you heard Ronnie say, I am something of a late bloomer as a debut novelist, but that's because I have spent a long time amassing life experience. I can't say that it's a career path I would necessarily recommend, but has certainly given me a lot of life experience to draw on. And it is true that I was a performer in a circus act for a while, and I'm lucky to have survived, especially the llama. But my husband and I now live in Boise, Idaho. We co-volunteer as court-appointed advocates for children going through the foster care system, and we live with our emotionally needy cat, Bandit. Next slide, please. So what led me to writing Griffin Speaker, what made it the story that I absolutely had to write, is a little counterintuitive. During the COVID lockdown, I read 2 books, Cast by Isabel Wilkerson and The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee. And they did not allow me to unsee what they showed me. Social justice has always meant a lot to me, but they especially showed me how much we all lose when we live in systems that assign people rigid roles based on arbitrary measures like race, religion, gender, income, and so on. And those are tricky topics to write about. But as another one of my literary heroes, Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, said, you have to write the book that wants to be written. And if the book will be too difficult to write for grown-ups, you write it for children. Next slide, please. So Rain, our main character in Griffin Speaker, is a 12-year-old girl. She's an orphan. She comes from the very lowest rank in the Griffinland order. And that means that as soon as she turns 13, she's destined for a future of hard labor working underground in the tubes. Now, but then she meets a wild griffin. And instead of the griffin tearing her to pieces, they form a bond. And an old law says that that bond entitles Rain to an education at the elite Griffin Rider Academy. But her rise in rank threatens to topple Griffinland's fragile hierarchy, and those at the top will do anything to make sure that she fails. So they set her a task to prove her worth. Armed with just her wit and accompanied by her best friend and a very unlikely ally, Rain has to go to the highest peak in Griffinland and defeat the monster who dwells beneath its summit. Next slide, please. One of the things that I'm so excited about is the artwork in Griffin Speaker, for which I cannot take credit. This is the map of Griffinland that was done by Virginia Allen, who also did the maps for Impossible Creatures and many other wonderful books. The whole story takes place within this imaginary realm, which is home not just to griffins, but to lots of other hybrid winged beasts that I had a lot of fun creating, like bamsters and hen bunnies and raven cats. And the next slide, please. The cover art and interior black and white illustrations are by Matt Rockefeller, and I'm just so over the moon about them. He did such an amazing job of capturing the energy of the story and the characters. And this is the moment in chapter 2 when Rain first meets Griff, who will become her griffin friend for the very first time. And this is the passage I'd like to read to you. The barn seemed even taller when Rain peered inside. Dusty sunlight drifted down from openings that ran alongside the roof beams far above. Dried net reeds covered the floor, and there was a smell of iron and sky and wildness. Other than that, the barn seemed full of nothing but that pull she had felt, an energy that seemed focused high up in the farthest corner. Rain's eyes were still adjusting to the dim light when the sound came again. It was something between a shriek and a call, and it made the smallest hairs under Rain's stubby braid try to uncurl. She froze like a frightened hen bunny. Not daring to breathe, Rain peered up into the rafters. Looming above her was a shape darker than the surrounding gloom, a shape that moved and changed as she watched. Great wings unfolded, each of them longer than Rain was tall. The dark shape detached itself from its high perch. Fear clamped Rain's eyes shut. There was a rush of air against her face, a soft, heavy thump as the flying thing came to rest on the dry reeds of the floor, and the cry again, this time much closer. Something touched Rain's hair. Her eyes flew open. She was face to face with a griffin. There was no harness on this griffin, no saddle, nothing tying it to its perches. This griffin was wild and free. With its wings folded, it tilted forward on its haunches, its long tufted tail curving back and forth. Rain stood still, fear mingling with thrill as the huge beak nibbled at her scalp with surprising gentleness. Above that beak, the hooded yellow eyes spoke of something beyond ferocity. There was wildness and freedom and something else, something deep and warm, like a shaft of sunlight after a damp walk through the rain-soaked net. She couldn't have described how she felt, except that she was seen, not as a grub, not as an orphan, but as who she was, somewhere inside, somewhere where rank and the Griffinland order didn't mean anything at all. Last slide, please. I'm so appreciative of getting to present Griffin Speaker with you, and I do hope that you will share Rain's journey with her and her companions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. We have two more presenters, and we will move now to Codie Crowley. Codie is the author of Here Lies a Vengeful Bitch and a lifelong teller of ghastly tales. As a child, she once told a story at a slumber party that was so scary it caused mass hysteria in her tiny hometown, and she's been chasing that high ever since. When she isn't writing chilling fiction, she's usually out looking for ghosts in Salem, Massachusetts, where she lives with her husband, their cat, and a collection of creepy dolls. The floor is yours, Codie.
Thank you. For some reason, my video, it keeps saying that I'm disabled for the video, but we will continue. Okay, there it goes. Yay, okay. Hi. All right, so yeah, I'm here to talk about Body Count, which is my upcoming young adult horror novel. It's a sapphic supernatural slasher that's like Candyman meets the Jersey Shore. And it's about a girl named Sunday Valentine who met the ghost of a drowned doo-wop singer named Holly Jolly at the bottom of a motel pool in Wildwood when she was a kid. And he gave her 3 wishes, but didn't mention that each wish has a deadly price, a price that Sunday still hasn't paid in full. So now Sunday's going back to Wildwood for prom weekend, and Holly Jolly's been waiting for her. And this time, he'll kill anyone he has to in order to collect the debt that Sunday owes him. So Body Count is my second novel, and I knew I wanted to write another feminist horror story, and I knew it was going to be a slasher. And I think that with a slasher, there's 2 things that are most important. One is that you need to nail the moment when the final girl stops running, when she turns around and picks up a weapon and decides that she's going to kill whatever is trying to kill her, no matter what it takes. And the other is that you need an iconic slasher. Next slide, please. So I chose the location of Wildwood first because it's possibly like the weirdest of all Jersey Shore towns, and that's saying something. So I started creating my slasher by digging into Wildwood history. And the first thing I found out was that the island that's now Wildwood was literally like once a wild wood. It was a forest full of holly trees, and most of these trees were cleared as the island was developed, but there was one that remained for a long time because of its strange shape. It was a bit of a tourist attraction and was known as the W tree. So this was the first building block for me. It gave my slasher his name, Holly Jolly. Next slide. So about 2 decades before Wildwood became known as the doo-wop capital of the world, it was the home of a strange attraction known as the Motor Dome, or the Wall of Death, which featured motorcycles and race cars whirling around this wooden bowl-like enclosure. And because of this Wall of Death in Wildwood, Wildwood is the only Jersey Shore town where your chances of being mauled by a lion are not statistically 0. Next slide. See, in the 1930s, there was a stunt rider named Irene Dobish who had a pet lion that would ride in the sidecar of her motorcycle as she drove around the Wall of Death. In a turn of events that would have been clear to anyone not chugging too much cocaine soda, this lion eventually escaped its enclosure and mauled a man to death before leading Wildwood police on a day-long lion hunt safari that ended with the lion dying by police fire. Next slide. I was also inspired by the same true story that inspired Jaws, which was the shark attacks of 1916. That year, multiple people were attacked by a shark along the Jersey Shore. The rogue shark was called the Sea Wolf, and it ended up swimming up the Matawan River. Where it attacked a group of boys swimming in the river, and it killed one of the boys. And when the surviving boys ran into town to alert adults, a group of men went to search the river, certain that the boys were like mistaken about the shark. They were like, there's no way that there's a shark in the river. So they went, and one of the men that went was attacked by the shark as well. Next slide. So several sharks were caught and blamed for the attacks, but none were absolutely confirmed to be the sole culprit. So after the summer of so many bizarre attacks that seemed somehow consciously malicious, as if the shark was aware of what it was doing, the attacks mysteriously stopped. So maybe they did catch the right shark, or maybe something else was to blame. Next slide. So if you're wondering how all these weird details came together into something that has this bubblegum pink blood splattered sapphic vibe, you can find out by reading Body Count when it releases May 5th. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the first chapter. In this, Sunday is 11 years old, and her mom are living at the Coral Cove Motel in Wildwood for the summer. Sunday has just snuck out of their motel room late at night, and she's noticed that there's like this painted sign on a pool gate with strange pool rules. The rules are: no diving, no running, no glass. Do not open your eyes underwater. So curiosity gets the better of her, and she decides to jump in and see for herself what happens if you open your eyes underwater. Cool turquoise swallowed her, and she sank into the deep end. When her toes scraped the slick tiles at the bottom of the pool, Sunday floated there like a music box ballerina. She opened her eyes. Marbled light snaked across the pool floor, the courtyard lamps refracted by the rippling water. Bubbles swirled around her like pearls. The water pressed against her ears, filling them with muffled swishes, gurgles, and glug-glugs as she bobbed in the undulating blue. She looked out the length of the pool before her, inclining gently all the way to the staircase at the shallow end. Without all the splashing kids and swimming vacationers, the pool seemed huge and hollow. Her toes poked at the aqua mosaic below, the ground slowly slipping away as she floated back toward the surface. Maybe that rule really was there for no reason. Maybe the worst that could happen if you opened your eyes inside the pool at the Coral Cove Motel was a case of conjunctivitis. But as the breath held in her chest began to thin, she heard something else in the muted murmur of splishes and glugs. Something like a growl. And she realized ever since she'd opened her eyes, she'd just been suspended there, staring out the length of pool ahead of her. She never turned around to see what might be behind her. Sunday kicked her legs and twisted in the water. At this end of the pool, the courtyard lights were just a distant glimmer. Sky blue faded to darkest night, and as she floated there, lungs burning, she saw something in the shadowy deep. It was his eyes she noticed first, the way they shone like two silver coins glinting in the murky dark. Shrouded by shadow, he crouched perfectly still in the corner of the deep end, like a spider in an eave. Between the ripples of water, she could make out his shape. The suit he wore, brown as tree bark, a crown of holly on his head, berries, red as rubies, and his mouth, when he smiled, full of pointed, black teeth. And that's it. I hope you check out Body Count. Thank you.
Codie, thank you. That was wild. Our last presenter will be Darianne Schramm. Darianne grew up in Gainesville, Florida, listening to the sounds of the woods and the music of Tom Petty. When she's not writing stories about grief, love, and characters who are slightly nihilistic, you can find her eating the darkest possible chocolate and playing overly aggressive games of Scrabble. She has a BA in philosophy from Elon University and her master's from the University of Southern California, where they reluctantly let her write her thesis on rock and roll lyrics. She's currently getting her PhD in New Zealand, where she lives with her husband, daughter, and golden doodle. 72 Hours of You is her debut novel. Take it away, Darianne.
Hi, thank you. My name is Darianne Schramm, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I am currently living in a small coastal beach town in New Zealand, which is lovely. And yes, I do indeed see sheep almost every day of my life. 72 Hours of You is my debut novel, and it is one that came to me with the characters already done. They'd kind of just appeared in my head and were talking to me and demanding to be written. And when a character demands to be written, you have to say yes. You must do what they say. I wrote this book during the pandemic. I was thinking a lot about death and life and the unfairness of being alive and dying, and this book is what came out of that. I was feeling a lot of anxiety, as I'm sure many of you have also. And I was feeling what I like to call pre-grief, which is grieving something that hasn't happened or might not ever even happen. I've always been slightly anxious, but this was a whole other level. I was grieving and I was upset and I was devastated over things that could happen, and spending a lot of time in that headspace just is not great. So I wrote this book as an outpouring of that pre-grief, and I learned, along with Sydney, the main character, what it means to really live in this world. And I mean truly live, not just be alive. And I think that the end result is something that I'm really proud of, which is a kind of manifestation of this idea that I always talk about with my daughter. I gave her a necklace when she was little, and sometimes she would not want to wear it because she was afraid that if she did wear it, she would lose it, or it would get broken, or something would happen to it. And I would always tell her, like a very wise mother, if you don't wear it, it might as well already be gone. And if we are so concerned with what might happen to something, a tragedy that might befall us, that we don't actually end up engaging in life at all, well, we might already as well already be gone. And it is much easier to say that to my daughter than it is to live it. And it's much easier to write about it than it is to live it. But I think that this book has given me some real perspective on that constant and eternal struggle of learning to live while knowing that we all will eventually die. So, with that uplifting send off, here is an excerpt from my book. This is about the middle of the book when Sydney, the main character, and Peter, her love interest, are walking around New York City. Sydney sees pink neon death clocks over people's heads 72 hours before they die, and they've just spotted one. And Peter, a lovable book boy that he is, has decided that he is going to, against Sydney's rules, go and talk to the clocker, the person with the clock over their head. And actually, he's going to not only talk to them, he's going to give them a New York hot dog. And this is Peter's conversation with Sydney afterwards. I'm not trying to change things, Peter says, for anyone but you. Me? I look up at him. What the hell is that supposed to mean? If the worst part for you is not being able to do something, I thought maybe this would help. He was sad and then he wasn't, and now you don't have to spend all day thinking about how beaten down he looked. Now you can think about how he's going to go home and tell Patricia about his memory stuff. Who the fuck is Patricia? His wife. Right, of course. He's still going to die, I say. You know that, right? It's not like he's going to go home and tell her and they're going to make some emergency doctor's appointment and save him. You do know that. I know. I mean, shit, he could die of a heart attack or something. I know, Peter says again. But this way, he won't die with a secret. He won't die with a secret. I think about all the secrets I have buried inside me, like a paranoid doomsdayer stashing tin cans of money all over the backyard, losing track of where they're buried and what's inside each little coffee tin. Charles, Caroline, Mom's scratched up face, all the clocks I've seen, every single person in my red notebook, 90% of the thoughts in my head. Oh, good for him, I say, but it still doesn't change anything. It doesn't change his death. Peter pauses and reaches out to take my trash from me, but it still changes something. There's something there, shimmering in his words, but I feel like if I look too hard, it'll burn my eyes. Listen, Sydney. Peter takes a breath and rakes his fingers through his hair. I don't know if I should bring it up before or let it go, but now that we're kind of what? He inhales again and looks me in the eyes. I saw you on your run before you fell. And my stomach turns in on itself, and I wish I had that vase from the pizza speakeasy to smash against the sidewalk. And I saw you close your eyes. You looked... He slides his hands out of his hair and down to his neck. You looked like you were really hurting. Suddenly it feels like the negative space between me and the sky is alive and bearing down on me, like the hand of God, or shit, maybe the hand of the devil, is crushing me into the stone I'm sitting on. If I stay here one single second longer, I might flatten into nothing. I'm supposed to drive home with Jules, I blurt. I have to go back to school. I try to feel self-righteous or pissed, but I'm just so fucking embarrassed. I want to sink to the bottom of the ocean and implode like some billionaire's Titanic sub, disintegrating into oblivion. I can't believe I thought I could have some montage-style city adventure. Going to Dylan's Candy Bar, for fuck's sake. It doesn't get any more delusional than that. Who the fuck do I think I am? I can't just go there and pretend I'm some normal, happy person in search of jumbo Sour Patch Kids. I can't be in this city at all. There are too many people, and too many clocks, and too many sirens, and too much honking, and too many fucking hot dogs, and too many questions from Peter. I stand up. I have to go. I have to go now. Sydney, I didn't mean to. She'll be waiting. Jules, I have to pick her up now. I wait for Peter to triple up on his apologies or go on the charm offensive. I wait for him to show me photos of enormous lollipops and person-sized chocolate bars, to point out that Jules is arguably one of the most popular people in our school, and there will be plenty of people falling all over themselves to drive her home. But he just crumples up the trash and tosses it into the bin at the bottom of the stoop. You don't have to explain yourself. Your not wanting to be here is enough. I nod, my jaw clenched, afraid to let any words escape. Peter steps off the stoop and onto the sidewalk. Let's go. And that is my excerpt for today. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thanks, Darianne. And that is that for our presentations today. Another big thank you to all of today's presenters. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. You can also find out about the latest webinars on our social channels, so visit us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. Booklist is thrilled to announce that our popular Readers Advisory Workshop series is back this year. You can scan the QR code on the screen or head over to our website to register for this free event on March 18th, featuring 3 stellar 1-hour presentations covering Reader's Advisory for history, a deep dive into romantasy, and an exploration of the 4 cornerstones of reader interest. Hope to see you there. 150 years of empowering library professionals, advancing access to knowledge, and protecting the freedom to read. Since 1876, the American Library Association has embodied America's aspiration for knowledge and democracy, championing the professionals who make that promise real every day. Scan the QR code on this screen or visit ala150.org to learn how you can join us in helping to shape the next 150 years of libraries. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and another huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsor, Disney Publishing. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.